Okay, so
Romans 15.
all right, let me flip to Romans 15. So the question, what's the question again, Alan?
God's talking about the Gentiles.
Oh, do Gentiles owe reparations to the nation,
Yeah.
to the nation of Israel? I say no. Alan says yes. Let's go to the videotape and see what it says in Scripture. I'm going to Romans chapter 15.
Carnal things.
What verse?
27.
Okay, so it says, "It hath pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things." Now, when therefore I affirm this, blah, blah. I don't think that means that believers, Gentile believers, have to pay money or give property to Jews. I think that just means that we have to support them.
Well, okay, but
They gave us, because of them we have salvation,
right,
so we owe them.
It's comparing the spiritual to what?
Material?
To the physical.
Well, right. So the
But
physical,
the
when I come out with a Star of David flag and I say support Israel, because I think that's a physical act.
Okay.
I don't think that, you know, it means that I could just transfer some funds over to a bank account in Israel and I've done my job. I think you have to go out and support rhetorically and ideologically.
Now here's another question. When Gentiles,
because how do we know money? Like if we sent money to, which I've done, I've supported some of the cities in the former West Bank or whatever when it was a new thing, but you never know what. Just like donating to a charity, you never know where that money's going.
I agree. It can come in different forms. I agree with you.
I think rhetorical is better because it sends a message to everybody else.
Right. Now look at it. Now look at the other verse. Is, you know, in Isaiah, I think it's 11. Why is God saving? Why is God?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why is God saving Gentiles? He says to provoke the Jews to what?
Well, I know the verse says jealousy. I would, being a Gentile, I would say that it's because he loves me. I don't think he's just using me as a political ploy. I don't think I'm the carrot on a stick. But he definitely
Well, what does it mean to provoke them to
he
jealousy?
definitely provokes the Jews to jealousy. But I don't think that's the reason. The reason is because he loves us, because we are human beings created in his image. All of the children of men, I think, are equally loved by God. I don't think God loves Jews more than Gentiles.
More, right? That's not
well, but if you're saying that the only reason Gentiles got saved was so that
no, I didn't say
the
only.
real.
I didn't say the only. I'm saying they have an obligation.
No, but you had said something along the lines
Well,
that
I was wrong then.
provoking,
Yeah,
provoking the jealousy is for sure what he's hoping will happen and what is happening. But I think he loves us both the same. You know.
Right, so I say then, did they stumble that they might fall? Right? And he goes, God forbid. But by their salvation is come unto the Gentiles to provoke them to jealousy. Now if their fall is the riches of the world, and their loss, the riches of the Gentile, how much more their fullness?
Mm-hmm.
But I speak to the Gentiles, as much as I am an apostle of the Gentiles, I glorify my ministry. By any means I may provoke to jealousy them that are my flesh, and may say some of them.
Right, so Paul is trying to provoke the Jews to salvation.
Right, and he's saying the Gentiles have that same burden, or they should have that same burden. Like Paul said, if it's up to me, I'd give my salvation up.
Well, yeah, but that falls into the Great Commission, right? Evangelism is the obligation of every believer.
And it starts.
Not just for Jews.
And it starts to the Jew first.
Well, no, I think what that verse means is that that the gospel of salvation went to the Jews
I
first.
understand, but I'm saying by its very nature, even the apostle to the Gentiles, the first thing he would do, he would go reason with the Jews in the temple.
Well, surely that doesn't mean that some guy in Newark, New Jersey, or in the Bronx has to go to Brownsville section of Brooklyn first and preach the gospel to the rabbi.
Well, it's a good question.
Right?
How far do you have to take it? Should he find a Jew in his area that probably owns a
No,
building? Maybe.
No,
maybe the guy that owns his.
I would say I'm not taking it.
Housing.
I'm not taking it that far. I mean, yeah, you'll find some Jewish, I guess, landlords.
But you look at churches, right, and they have a map of the world of where they're doing evangelism, and they don't have Israel there.
Well, because most of what we call the church is not really saved, and they don't care about Israel because they don't understand that God does require us to support and evangelize Jewish people. But people like John Hagee, who's a famous TV pastor, has come to Miami. I sat in the 4th row and listened to him, and I brought people to hear him, only to hear him tell me that Jews don't need to be saved because they're saved by virtue of their biological descent from Abraham. So don't evangelize Jewish people because it's anti-Semitic. Now that's a leader of a Christian ministry that's as big as anything in the world, and it's an abomination.
If you had to judge Christendom by its fruit, nobody would be here.
Well, nobody
would be.
Well, that's silly though. I mean, if right, don't you have to judge? You know, right?
But you have to judge them by their works, right? I'm not saying that.
Well, Jesus said, by their fruit you shall know them.
Right, but he's talking about the individual. But I'm saying if you look at Christendom as that mustard seed that grew out of control, made up of wheats and tares, and made up of true and counterfeit, and he says the church age is meant to be this big apostate mess where there's some true believers, but most of it is unbelievers.
No. Wait, where does it say that it was meant? God meant the church to be an apostate mess?
No, he says that's I'm saying the visible, not the invisible church, not the true believers.
No, I don't know that verse.
Well, it's talking about the mustard seed.
The mustard seed is just saying that something very, very small like your faith can grow into something powerful. If you have a very small faith, and Dave Hunt uses a great analogy, he says, I have very little faith, but it's in a very mighty God.
Right.
And that's the point. If your faith is just the size of a mustard seed, which is, by the way, smaller than apple seeds, it's the smallest seed of any plant.
But you're missing all the other parables about the wheats and the tares and saying they're going to grow together. And it says,
you're mixing metaphors.
Well, I'm saying those all are
the mustard seed and the tares are not in the same.
But they're all in the same vein. And it also talks about the physical church.
I'm disagreeing.
All right, that's okay.
The mustard seed, I think, is a parable that a very little bit of faith in God can grow into a mountain of awesomeness.
It's an abnormal size. And what are the birds?
What do you mean it's abnormal size? Big.
But
if you have a little faith in God, big things will happen.
I understand. Okay.
But I don't think that there's any verse in the Bible that says God intended for the church to be encompass apostates and real believers.
Not the true church, the physical church.
You're saying that God intended there to be a physical church that includes heretics and apostates.
I'm saying that the physical Christendom, just what you said. What did you say about all these churches that have maps of over the world? That's part of Christendom. That's all part of the churches. And he said that was prophesied that there would be many of them that are just counterfeit.
Right. God didn't want that to happen.
But I'm saying it was prophesied that's how it would be. I'm not saying...
False prophets, false Christians, false churches.
Christendom, the whole envelope of Christianity is made up of that. And that was prophesied in the New Testament.
Yeah, what I would argue is that the envelope of Christianity is predominantly unsaved.
I understand, but I'm saying that's biblically, that was prophesied.
It was predicted that it was going to happen. Exactly. But what you had said that...
I'm not saying God wanted it.
Oh, okay, because you said he intended it. And I say he didn't intend it.
Well, he said that's how it would be.
Right, he knows how it's going to be because he sees the future. Right, exactly. But he's angry about that.
I agree.
And he's going to judge that.
Right, but
the apostates are going to get judged worse than the unbelievers. Right. I believe.
No, I understand. There's different degrees of punishment in hell.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's different rewards.
Right. It wouldn't make sense, right? If Satan gets the same judgment as everybody else, it doesn't seem to me that would be fair.
Right, and there's crowns given, right?
Right.
Certain things.
Yep. It's definitely...
And all your works are tested, right? The wood, hay, stubble, right?
It's capitalism and not socialism. Everybody isn't getting the same pay.
And it's a benevolent despot.
Yeah, well, dictatorship, I'd just say a theocratic monarchy.
Yeah, okay.
God's king on the throne.
And what did the Jews say? I don't want a king. Well, give us a Gentile king like
Well, they were the ones that said they did want one. They didn't want God. They didn't want God to rule. We want an earthly king. He's like, all right.
Yeah, give us Saul. Look at the map.
All right, I'll give you. But when he starts taxing you and sending your sons off to war to die, you're going to be sorry.
That's the pride of life, right? The lust of the flesh, right? Give me this, give me that. I want. And then sometimes you get what you want and you learn the hard way. Or maybe you learn the hard way.
Well,
all day long I held out my hands to a stiff-necked people.
Yeah.
But he keeps his covenant. God is a covenant-keeping God. He'll still honor the promise he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah, that's for sure. And see, and my position is for people, especially Gentiles, they get upset because I put the Star of David up. And why are you so pro-Israel? Because Israel is the physical proof that God keeps His promises, right? I mean, if nothing else.
Right.
So you don't want them to be destroyed, because if they're destroyed, then God didn't keep His promises.
Right.
So maybe I don't get to go to heaven. Maybe He fails.
And what's really interesting, if you study the prophets or even study the law, the first 5 books, you look at the judgment that God says that the Jewish people are going to get, right, through using the Gentile, and it makes this October 7th look like nothing.
Yeah, and I think
and that's it's hard to hear, but if the Jewish people
it's a harsh truth, right?
If they're faithful to their own Tanakh, they'll see that the punishments of God are a lot worse than October 7th.
Well, and it's funny because I found that verse that remember the Israeli lady last week, Rita, was asking me, where does it say in Zechariah? It's in Zechariah 13, verse 14, where basically it says 2 out of 3 Jews are going to die, but the 1/3 that is saved will cry out to Messiah to save them, and every one of them will be saved through the last moments of the tribulation period, and all Israel, Dave Hunt points out, then alive, will be saved. And Miss Brown and I...
That's the life from the dead, and that's all Israel will be saved.
Well, Miss Brown and I were discussing, and we had talked about that. She says, well, what about October 7th? You think God's going to do something about that, or has he judged them? I said, no, He didn't judge them. They got away with it. She said, well, I don't know if they got away with it. I said, they chopped off the heads of 40 babies at least, not to mention the other 2,000 people they killed, but nothing happened after that. You blew up a few buildings and blew up a few roads and knocked down a few mines. That's not, to me, judgment for massacring an entire hospital full of babies. So my point, hold on, my point was that after the rapture of the church, then God's judgment comes upon the whole world for rejecting Jesus and all the bad stuff they did. But even then, He's merciful and will allow them to be saved, but they're going to have to get their heads cut off for rejecting the mark of the beast, and 70% of the earth is going to die. So I was saying to her, the reason why we should get saved now is because during the tribulation period, it's going to be horrific. And most people are going to take the mark of the beast to avoid the horrificness that's come. So judgment is coming. The October 7th has not been recompensed yet, but after the rapture, the recompensing is going to start. And I wouldn't want to be here for that. I don't know why certain people calling themselves Christians want to go through that last 7-year period of time, the 70th week of Daniel, when God is mad at everybody on earth for all the evil stuff they've done, when they could have just believed in Jesus and been forgiven for it. So, yeah, you don't want to be on earth when God lets His wrath loose. I don't want to be here. I don't know why anybody claiming to be a Christian would want to go through that. So, judgment's coming, but not for us, right? We're going to be up at the Bema seat getting our rewards and some crowns for coming out here and standing around in the hot sun.
It's a blessing to be able to be, present the gospel with boldness. And truth, right? It's an opportunity.
And again, I've made the comment. I said, God's not a communist or a socialist. You are going to get recompensed later. You may not get it now, but you'll be getting it. And when you get it, it'll be eternal.
And you want God's mercy rather than.
That's the whole reason to get saved. Somebody who gets saved and never does a single work for God is still getting His mercy, and that's in and of itself worthwhile. But
let me run. Blessings, Baruch Hashem.
All right. Thank you for the prayers today and for your excellent exegesis of the Word of God, particularly in the Hebrew, which
it's just talking to the other nice
people.
Alan also.
Was his name Alan too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's good. Iron sharpens iron. A student of the Word, and that's it.
I wish I could have captured, because I got this mic, but I'm going to get one that has a double mic head, so I couldn't hear you guys' conversation. What were you guys talking about?
Everything.
Okay.
But it was a blessing.
All right. So see, yeah, look, 2 weeks in a row, random chance occurrences. I don't believe. What's that? Coincidence is not a Jewish word, or not kosher or something like that. I forgot who said that, but somebody said that. 2 weeks in a row. All right, man. Good job today, Rabbi Allen, of exegeting the Word, and and all of that. So again, Southie Gospel Ministries signing off again for the week. Until next week, if the rapture doesn't happen first.